two neighbors with nuclear weapons on the brink of war. India carrying out its deepest strikes inside Pakistan in more than 50 years. Okay, the blast from one of those strikes was caught on camera and shared on social media. You saw it right there. India says it was targeting, quote, terrorist infrastructure on the heels of a tourist massacre, a massacre of tourists in the disputed territory of Kashmir. Pakistan maintains it had no involvement in that. The Pakistani military says India's strikes killed 26 civilians, and security forces there say 5 Indian Air Force jets and a drone were shot down during that attack. So there's some serious back and forth here. CNN Chief National Security Analyst Jim Sciutto is with us now. And Jim, just remind everyone why the stakes are so high here and what's different this time.
Well, the obvious one, as you note, these are two nuclear-powered states. I mean, there are no indications they're close to an escalation to a nuclear exchange, but that's always on the radar because once you're in it, it's hard to control the escalation because one side's proportional response could be considered by the other side to be an escalation. And here you have two differences compared to previous attacks we've seen. As you noted, the deepest strikes inside Pakistan by India, not just in the disputed area of Kashmir, but now also Pakistani claiming to have drawn blood as well from India with as many as 5, not yet confirmed by others, 5 jets shot down. Now, on the good side, that could allow both sides to say they've struck sufficiently, right? We struck India. Inside Pakistan, we have shown our resolve. We took Indian jets down, says Pakistan, and we've shown our resolve. It's possible, but that said, Pakistan has vowed a resolute response, and we're now awaiting that.
Yeah, look, in 5 jets, we're shooting down 5 jets, and again, we don't have confirmation of that. But that's not a skirmish. I mean, that's close to war when you're talking about things at that scale. Proxies here. I mean, first of all, I guess India and Pakistan are such major countries with major militaries. It's not necessarily a proxy war here, but there's who supports whom is interesting.
Well, that's the central allegation here, right? Is that India blames Pakistan for this terror attack because, and it's a fact, there's a history of these terrorist groups operating on Pakistani soil with ties even to Pakistani intelligence, etc. Now, Pakistan says that is no longer the case. India still holds them responsible. But we've seen this before. You go back to the Mumbai attacks, right, in 2008. Horrible attack, Lashkar-e-Taiba, a Pakistan-based group, and then that led to one of several. I was going over my notes, the number of times the two sides have shot each other. 2019, 2016, 2014, 2013, 2011, 2008, 2002. Right. I mean, these are regular events.
They are, although, again, deeper than we've seen before with potentially more consequences we've seen before. What's the U.S. involvement here, or how much power or sway does the U.S. have to sort of calm things down?
Listen, I mean, the U.S. is not the only one making calls right now. You saw the Secretary Rubio has been in touch with the two sides here. The neighbors are in touch. One could expect that China might be in touch as well. It shares a border. Each one saying, let's keep a cap on this. Now, I did speak to U.S. military officials because I asked them, what is your level of concern that this expands beyond what it is right now? And again, this is hard to predict, but they said that in recent years, India and Pakistan have managed to manage escalation, right? To take shots, which are, let's not minimize the danger of that, but then to back down. So you at least have some history of that as well, but we'll have to see because Pakistan, it seems by all accounts, will respond. And then the question will be, how does India interpret that?
Yeah, again, the what happens next here, if there is a next, is so crucial. So watch this space. Jim Sciutto, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Walk us through exactly what we understand to have happened and where these tensions stand at this point.
Well, we understand at about 1 o'clock in the morning, India struck what they described as 9 different sites inside of Pakistan, some of them inside Pakistan proper. One of those, the deepest strike India has made into Pakistan since 1971, when the two countries fought an intense war at that time. That is perhaps beyond the bounds of what Pakistan had been expecting from India in retaliation for the killing of 26 civilians in Indian-controlled Kashmir 2 weeks ago. The Prime Minister here has said that Pakistan's army is entitled to act in self-defense using corresponding actions, that they should avenge the loss of innocent life. He was speaking in the past couple of hours in Parliament. It was a very emotive speech, parliamentarians banging on their desks at time as his cadence rose and fell through this speech. He didn't talk about actions of revenge. What he talked about was a valiant army and air force being prepared. Spoke about the downing of the Rafale jets. These are the French-made fighter jets. He said India took a lot of pride in those aircraft, and Pakistan should take pride in the fact that they were able to shoot them down. So far, video appears to have emerged of at least one of those fighter jets downed in Indian-controlled Kashmir, about 40 miles from the border. It appears at this early stage of analysis that it may have been hit by a surface-to-air missile fired from Pakistan in defence. And this is, in essence, what the Prime Minister is alluding to here. The fact that Pakistan was able to do this, they should take pride in, because Rafale, the aircraft and the manufacturers themselves have taken pride until now that none of their fighter jets have been downed. I think more broadly about where the situation goes from here, the Prime Minister speaking about that right to self-defence and the support for the army to take that action. It's not clear that that action is imminent. It's not clear at all what it would be. But in the past few days, Pakistan has vowed to retaliate to any Indian strikes here. And of course, very emotive that children are among the dead, women and children among the injured, that a mosque should be hit, strikes a chord. But I think it's also worth just pointing out here that the leader of a proscribed terrorist organization here, Jaish-e-Mohammed, that took responsibility for a terror attack inside of Indian-controlled Kashmir in 2019, a leader who continues to use his Telegram channel to post aggressive statements against India. He said his home had been targeted and that 10 of his family members, including children, had been killed. Now, his organization is a proscribed terrorist organization, proscribed by the US, the UK, the UN, the EU, and by Pakistan as well. Becky?
Nick, stand by. I just want to bring in Vedika here. India, of course, has linked the massacres on April the 22nd in Kashmir to Islamabad. That is a claim that Pakistan denies. India says it has a right to self-defense against terrorism at this point. What more are we hearing from the Indian government? Can we expect this to further escalate? And what do we know about Pakistan military claims that Indian fighter jets and a drone were shot down earlier this morning?
I'm going to respond to your second question first, Becky. We've reached out to the Indian Air Force. There has been no response from them. But what experts here are really wanting to understand is, where is the proof from Pakistan when it comes to them claiming that they've shot down these jets? If there is proof, why haven't they come out with it? Where are the images? But like I said, we're still to hear from the security forces here in India. There's been no word, despite a press conference a couple of hours back here in India, local time this morning, where the Foreign Secretary addressed the press and gave a lot of details on these attacks, or rather these the offensive carried out, the military offensive carried out by the Indian side. Now, ever since this attack, which was in the dead of night, like Nick pointed out, 1:05 a.m. till about 1:30, 25 minutes, 9 sites in Pakistan-administered Kashmir as well as in Pakistan were hit. We've had the ministers talk about it. They've come out, they've hailed the soldiers here in India, and they've congratulated them for carrying out this attack. Now, the national sentiment here in India ever since that heinous attack on the 22nd of April has been to take revenge, quote unquote. And if you remember, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the man back in 2019 who withdrew the special status of Kashmir, and he promised to bring peace to the valley. Now, the Indian government has come out today and said the reason Indian-administered Kashmir, Pahalgam was attacked on the 22nd of April was because it was economically progressing, the entire area, after what happened in 2019. And it's also because a lot of tourists were coming back to the area. And that's the reason that militant groups wanted to attack Indian-administered Kashmir all over again. We've had the defense minister come out today, the home minister come out today. We've had the National Security Advisor of India come out today, hailing this offensive, military offensive. But what's also interesting at this point is that you have the international gaze on South Asia right now. And many are calling it that India and Pakistan perhaps could be on the brink of war. But you have the Indian government now dialing all the stakeholders, the key players internationally, and telling them what went down from 1:05 to 1:30 on Wednesday morning. They're talking to their counterparts internationally, trying to tell them that we have only hit terror training camps in these areas. We've made very precise targets that we've hit really at this point. We've tried to minimize the casualties when it comes to civilians. But of course, Pakistan, like Nick said, says there's been a heavy casualty at their end.
Good to have you. Thank you. And it's important to get the perspective from Delhi. Last hour, I spoke with Pakistan's defense minister. I asked him about India's claim that all of the sites that it struck were linked to, quote, terrorist infrastructure. Have a listen.
Absolutely wrong. There's absolutely no evidence. India would just want to justify whatever they have done last night, and they were taught a very, befitting lesson that they lost 5 planes. 3 of them were Rafale and a MiG and a Jaguar. So they came in to target supposedly terrorist camps or training grounds or training camps.
But you're telling me that you don't know whether these sites were terrorist training sites?
No. There's absolutely no terrorist activities. It's just the imagination, the figment of imagination of India. They just want to justify it. Whatever they are doing, they're trying to find a justification for that. Absolutely, there's no...
You've just brought up the fact that India lost some fighter jets. So let's be quite clear about this. Pakistan claims it shot down 5 Indian Air Force jets and a drone, as I understand it. India says there's no evidence of that, no proof. So can you provide more detail? Hold on. Can you provide more detail? And is this the response that your army spokesman threatened, or is there further action to come? Let's start with this very specific allegation of 5 fighter jets shot down. Where's the evidence for that, sir?
It's all over the social media, on Indian social media, not on our social media. The debris of these jets fell into Indian occupied Kashmir, and it's all over Indian media today.
You're the defense
and they have
minister.
admitted their media has.
The reason to talk to you today, sir, it's not to talk about content all over social media. I'm sorry. It's not to talk about content all over social media. I'm asking you very specifically for the evidence, for the detail. For example, was any Chinese equipment used by Pakistan to down these Rafale jets, as I understand you are alleging them to be?
No Chinese equipment. We have Chinese planes, JF-17 and JF-10. They are Chinese planes, but they are being manufactured, assembled in Pakistan now. We have, very close to Islamabad, we have a facility over there where these planes are manufactured. And if India can buy planes from France and use them, we can also buy planes from China or Russia or United States or UK and use them. And let me say one thing. They have already admitted that the 3 planes were down.
Can I just repeat the question that I asked? I wasn't asking whether Chinese fighter jets were used. I'm just, was any Chinese equipment used by Pakistan to down these jets that you suggest were targeted?
Well, these planes were down with the dogfight. missiles were fired by our planes, and they were shot down.
That is the Pakistan Defence Minister speaking to me earlier as this situation develops. And his suggestion to me is that it will. He says that he is concerned that this is headed to an all-out war. We continue to reach out to officials in India for interviews to get their point of view as well. None have been able to join CNN since these strikes. We will continue to effort that.
The two countries have been fighting for decades, but this rapid escalation is alarming world leaders, including President Trump.
They've been fighting for a long time. You know, they've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries, actually, if you really think about it. No, I just hope it ends very quickly.
With me now, CNN military analyst and retired U.S. Army Major General James Spider Marks, and Bobby Ghosh, geopolitical analyst and former editor of the Hindustan Times. Glad to have both of you here. Bobby, let me start with you, because Pakistan is vowing to retaliate against India's strikes. Is there any off-ramp, or will these hostilities continue to escalate?
Well, if you see the way traditionally this kind of a conflict has gone in the past between these two countries, both sides make very large claims. We did this, we did that, we hit so many targets and killed so many people, and we shot down so many planes. These are big claims. The other side automatically denies those claims, but these claims are designed to give each party the off-ramp. They're designed to give each party the opportunity to say, we've achieved success, and now we can be the bigger guy, and we can sort of de-escalate the situation. But also, in previous instances, when these two countries have come to this place, the rest of the world has tried to engage with the leadership and tried to calm them down. Right now, the rest of the world, including the United States, is pretty distracted. So the risk with this kind of a confrontation is that with every time this happens, there's a tendency to go one step or two steps beyond the last occasion. So in the last occasion, Pakistan brought down one Indian aircraft, and this time they claim they brought down 5. We won't know for certain for quite some time whether that is true. India, on the last occasion, I think hit 3 targets. This time they're claiming they hit 9 targets. Okay. The risk always is you never know what is the point of no return. And you always worry that by accident, without really meaning to, one or the other side will cross that point of no return.
General, let me bring you in. I rely on your military expertise. And I mean, Pakistan's military made this declaration right after the strikes. Listen.
It was an unprovoked and blatant act of war. Once the Indian government, on their instructions, the Indian Air Force, while they remained within the Indian airspace, violated Pakistan's sovereignty.
You know, India and Pakistan, they've had bad blood for decades. But, General, why does this conflict concern so many in the West?
I think primarily because of the size of the attack that took place about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, and number one, against Indian tourists in the Kashmir region, and all of them were killed. But what we see now with the response from India, and bear in mind, India took that entire amount of time to dig into and determine that they had good enough intelligence and they could then assign, with a degree of credibility, blame on this attack to one of the terrorist organizations that is hosted by Pakistan. Now, the Pakistani government will say, no, they don't. But the LET, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, lives and trains and exists within Pakistan. They also have a charitable arm. And so, but they're, they have supported Al-Qaeda in the past. So as a result of the amount of time that India took, they then have claimed, as described by Bobby, they then had 9 targets, precision strike. It was a proportional and measured strike, is what the Indians will tell you. Again, battle damage assessment must be done to determine what actually took place. The key then is Pakistan now going to respond to this response? Are we now in a cycle of action, reaction, counteraction, and then that escalates? Nobody knows, but bear in mind, culturally, both sides have achieved a degree of honor. It's proportional, it's precise. India is saying Pakistan struck first, India then responded. Is that going to be enough? If we're having a Pakistan response to an Indian counterattack, we now are in a potential situation where forces have already been pre-positioned along the line of control. That's our artillery units, maneuver units. We're talking about attack helicopters. And bear in mind that targets have already been pre-designated and pre-planned long ago. So this is a potential battlefield with the possibility of significant damage.
Bobby, really quick, does the U.S. have any influence in calming things down?
Not at the moment, it does not. And both sides, the Indians and the Pakistani leadership, mainly their calculations will be based on domestic reaction, on how they sell this to their own people. The United States, frankly, whether it was this administration or the last one, at this point in the conflict, there's not a whole lot it can do except to say, if you guys want to talk, we're here to help. But I don't think the U.S. has enough leverage on either of those two countries, given how far things have gone. Now it's all down to decisions that will be made in Delhi and Islamabad, according to calculations that are made by leadership in both places.
Joining us right now to talk more about this is CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Colonel, first and foremost, we are hearing a lot of concern all over the world about how these two countries are on the brink of war. Why is this so important to the United States for this to de-escalate and for this to calm down?
Yeah, Kate, good morning. There are several reasons for that, but one of the most important is, as you've already pointed out, these are two nuclear powers, and both sides have nuclear weapons that can, in essence, do major damage on the other side. The Pakistanis have come in with not actually saying that they have a no first use policy, which means that if the Pakistani state feels that it is completely threatened by the Indians, in other words, existentially threatened, they would probably use nuclear weapons, at least in a tactical sense. So that is kind of what's at stake here. This would be, if it goes down that road and things aren't cleared up before that particular point in time is reached, this could very well see the use of nuclear weapons if it is not contained. So that's one aspect of it. The other part of it is that the U.S. is trying to develop a solid relationship with India. The relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump is actually quite a good one. The relationship between Pakistan and the U.S. is definitely not what it was, say, 50 plus years ago during the early 1970s, when there was another war between India and Pakistan. So it's a very, very different political dynamic. And Pakistan is basically an ally of China. India is somewhat of an ally to the United States, but it is also an ally to Russia. So there are all those dynamics that are at play here, and that's why it's one of the most important conflicts that is breaking out now here on Earth.
Which then leads to the question of what could push this over the brink. I mean, after India's strikes, Pakistan promising to retaliate because, India's strikes went deeper into Pakistan than we've seen in many decades. What does retaliation look like that doesn't escalate this further?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the Indians may have been trying to contain some of the things that they've been doing in response to the initial attack that killed the 26 tourists in Kashmir. And the reason I say that is because their target list seems to have basically included what they deem to be terrorist installations. And apparently they struck at least one of those based on what we're hearing from Nick Robertson. So that's aspect of it. However, the Pakistanis aren't seeing it that way. They're looking at this as you're attacking civilians, and that is what's going to precipitate certainly a reaction from Pakistan, even though they reportedly have those 5 Indian fighter jets and that drone. So there's all of that. So this is basically because of the political dynamics in both countries, we're looking at a major possibility of a major escalation before there's an off-ramp here. An off-ramp would, of course, be desirable, but until both sides agree that they've achieved enough, we're not going to see that off-ramp.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Colonel. Let's see what happens. I really appreciate your time.